video to show the basics of one-point perspective. This is where you are looking at a three-dimensional object from a straight-on view, but you can also see the side of that object, and it's going to recede back to one fixed point in the distance.
To follow along, you'll need a piece of paper, a pencil, a ruler, and an eraser.
So we're going to start with our horizon line. Your horizon line should be parallel to the top and the bottom of your paper. You can measure to make sure that it is equal on both sides if you want to. You can also just kind of eyeball it. I like to just line up the edge of my ruler with the edge of my paper and call that good. So I'm going to put a vanishing point right in the middle of my paper just for the explanation purpose, but you really can put your vanishing point anywhere along your horizon line. So we're going to start with our cube off to the right. And again, this can be either side, but I'm going to show you the right for the moment. I'm not going to really measure specifically. I'm just going to use the width of my ruler to kind of give me a general size. And what's interesting about this is that when you have your cube basically at the same height as your horizon line, it's going to look very severe. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So what I've done is I've connected one corner to my vanishing point. Now I'm going to connect the other corner to my vanishing point. So I have the top and the bottom both connected back to my vanishing point. So right now, if we imagine like, a directional chart, north, south, west, and east, we can imagine this would be the south facing wall, and this would be the west facing wall of our cube. Along our west facing wall, we're going to decide how deep we want that cube to be. I'm just going to eyeball it here to see about the same width as the front plane, and I'm going to make a vertical line cutting that off. So I've got now this plane that is going off into the distance that's accurate in conjunction with our vanishing point over here. I'm going to firm up these lines just a little bit so that you can kind of see what we've got. So we've got our south facing plane, our west facing plane. Now, if we wanted to make the box translucent or the cube translucent, we would take now from the top of the opposite lines and the bottom, the top and the bottom, and we would connect those also to our vanishing point. So really everything just keeps coming back there. So what we can see now is this really what would be the east facing wall. And if we were to connect with a horizontal line that is parallel with our horizon line, this and the intersection, which actually shows up right at that same intersection with our first line, that's going to be where that north facing wall would end up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a darker pencil and I'm going to firm up the lines that we have so you can kind of see. So here I've firmed up the lines for the front exterior if we wanted it to stay a solid cube. If we want to continue and make it darker all the way around as a transparent cube, you're going to, again, using your ruler, firm up the lines between your vanishing point and this faint line that we did that's parallel to the horizon line. So that's going to be the inside plane of the box. And what we need to do in order to make sense of that, it's kind of confusing right now, is we're going to draw a vertical. But what I want to do is make sure that we get that intersecting point at the right spot. So that's where our intersecting point is going to be below, and this is where our intersecting point is going to be above, and we're going to draw a straight line down between those two. So now we can kind of see this transparent cube with the south side facing us, the west side facing to the west, the north and the east side facing away from us. It's funny when you're starting to do like dimensional perspective drawing, it jumps back and forth in your eyes and it takes a minute to kind of figure out what's what. I like to encourage students to erase your working lines once you're done because it really makes it make more sense and helps that kind of jumping back and forth to not be quite so distracting. This also helps to kind of solidify your object and what it is. So again, this cube is particularly right at our horizon line. And really what that's going to determine is what part of it we see. We're looking kind of straight on at it. I'm going to do another one over here where it's below the horizon line. So we're going to start with those same steps. We're going to make our cube. And again, I'm just going to kind of trace around my ruler here to make some fairly straight edges. And if I overshoot a little bit, I can always clean those lines up later. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing from the corners of this square to create the cube. And I can just go from the beginning all the way around that square, connecting every one of those corners to our vanishing point. So now what we have is the front plane and the side plane and the opposite side plane. So the next step is to go in and decide how deep your box is going to be, and you're going to do that with a vertical line. And wherever that is, you can match up this top plane with a perpendicular line to that vertical. So this line is going to be parallel with your horizon line. So now I've got, again, another cube. I'm going to erase some of these lines inside just so that we can kind of make sense of things a little bit. And you'll notice by just erasing that plane, now it looks like the interior of a box, right? So you can kind of decide how to solidify what parts you're working with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make my ruler parallel again with my horizon line. And I'm going to draw a line to this intersecting point, which is going to show that bottom plane of the box. I already have the top plane showing because of my exterior view. So now what I can do is line those two up, and I have, again, a transparent cube. I can go through again and firm this up with a darker pencil. I can erase my vanishing point lines, which again are kind of distracting as you actually begin to work on your, finished drawing. So it's kind of nice to clean some of that stuff up. You can go back in and firm up lines that, you weren't totally sure about. I always use my ruler, even though I've already established those lines, just because I don't totally trust myself, first of all, to make a straight line. And then also just to check my accuracy. So now I've got another transparent cube over here that is no longer attached to my vanishing point. And what you can see here is that we can see the top surface of this. We can see this top plane because it's lower down. So the horizon line is really our eye level. When this box is lower than the horizon line, we're going to be able to see the top surface of it. Because this one's at eye level, we're looking straight on. And it's like if you were in a room, you could look down and see the floor and you look up and see the ceiling. Now we're going to do one more that's above the horizon line and see how that turns out. So before we start with this upper box, I went back in and firmed up the exterior lines on this lower box so that we can kind of see a little clearer what that exterior looks like, and then these lighter lines would be the interior if you wanted to keep that. If you don't want to keep that, you can always just erase those interior lines or, not draw them to begin with. And you have a nice solid cube that way. So if we see the top of the cube when we're below the horizon line, let's see if you can guess what we see when it's above the horizon line. We're going to start with our square again. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger just for fun. You can do this with a rectangle. You can do this with a cube. You can really do this with any shape. I remember as a kid we used to do block letters, and then we would connect the corners of all of the letters to this, and it looked like your name was kind of zooming out at you. It was so cool. So I'm going to make this one a solid. If I wanted to do transparent again, I would just connect that final line. This one, next step, I'm going to decide how wide I want this box to be. and I'm going to make a line parallel with my horizon line. Then I'm going to make a line vertical, which is going to be perpendicular to my horizon line. So what you'll notice here is that as I firm up these lines that we're going to keep, the box now looks like it's floating above us, and we can see the bottom panel. So if you guessed bottom panel, you are correct. And if you imagine like, you're at a shipyard and there's the container that's getting lifted off of the ship and stacked on top, you can kind of see how you might be able to look up and see the bottom of that container because it is above your eye level. So you can do above the horizon line to show you an object above your eye level, an object below the horizon line to show an object below your eye level, and an object just about on the horizon line to look at it straight on. So again, these are just simple cubes, but they're going to work the same way with any kind of geometric shape. And in the next video, I'm going to go ahead and explain how you're going to put those into context.